Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hey, back again on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is what is the name of the show again? Code 47. See, I got it. Episode 139. I guess we're a little thrown because we're recording early this week because of work stuff. But regardless, my name is Charlie Carden. I am your Trek Lord of West Michigan. Joined as always by my number one, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Doing all right.
All right. Well, we have another great show, naturally. We're getting into, our next episode will be covering the last two episodes ever of Lower Decks, which is crazy. So we're at the penultimate bunch up, as it were. And then we wrap up talking about season 6 of TNG, which was, again, as I've mentioned a zillion times, the first complete season where I watched it voraciously and led to my, being the big Trekker that I am. So, so we're going to do all that fun stuff. No news to talk about this week that I saw, Peter, unless I'm missing something.
I didn't notice anything, no.
I didn't think so. But before we get into, obviously, the nuts and bolts, as it were, we do like to talk about our wonderful Patreons over on our Secret Friend Squad at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Pop on over there, 7 days for free, and then staying on board really for as little as $2 a month. What do you get? Why would I want to do that? It's easy. Early shows like this one, we usually publish this on a Saturday or a Sunday. Everybody else doesn't get this show until a Monday night. You get ad-free shows. Our other shows show up ad-free. We got tons of awesome Patreon content, including a show that I do called The Facts of Geek Life. Peter is one of my frequent collaborators. Currently, he and I are making our way through Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. We take a series, we take a season, and then we take a handful of episodes and we break it down for you. And we just have a lot of fun. And again, $2 a month, I mean, that's a fraction of one trip to Starbucks. And you have all this great entertainment. I mean,
and it lasts longer.
And who are you to resist it? That's all I'm saying. These fine folks have supported us and do support us, and we're very grateful. People like Derek Trevelyan, the figure dude, Francie, who is my wife's hairdresser, the official hairdresser of Secret Friends Unite, Xbox Expansion Pass, Mr. Luke Lore, and my great Uncle Tim. Well, he's my Uncle Tim, but he's my great, Uncle Tim. Also, John Sedorf, the Phoenix Sisters Entertainment, Kelly and Crayley. We have, my screen popped up. I should remember these by now, but still, the visual cue helps. Brendan Myers, Corey in HD, Matthew Keel, who was just in Minneapolis and hanging out with Todd. I saw a picture on socials today. Love it when that stuff happens in real life. And here's a guy that I get to hang out with a lot, our newest Patreon, which is Kurt Krug. And we're super grateful for everything that Kurt does for the network, in particular, helping us do a lot of great interviews, such as the one that we've done with Nicholas Meyer, such as the one we did with Adam Nimoy recently, which you can find on our Patreon. Finally, our Secret Friends Super Squad, the folks who really make it work, the awesome Nias family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. We do know that Sean recently is under the weather. He has a couple of herniated discs, and we're hoping that he's getting the help he needs, because I had that problem, Peter, back in 2010, and it knocked me on my ass for about 6 months. I got it repaired by surgery, but oh my goodness, can't wait for the 24th century where Dr. Crusher will just wave a little wand over your back and I'll be like, yay, I'm fine. Worf had a crushed spine and they grew him another one. I mean, I need that kind of technology in my life. You know what I'm saying? It'll be good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's jump in and let's talk about Lower Decks. But one more plug, again, patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. 7 days for free, as little as $2 a month. We'd love to have you on board. Let's talk about Lower Decks. We got 2 episodes, and again, because we're doing this so early, I had to kind of jump around and find a summary. But anyway, episode 7, Peter, do you want to just...
I'll kind of read it through, and then we can kind of talk about it, I guess.
Let's do that, because otherwise we're really kind of choking up. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so episode 7, Fully Dilated. Great title.
I'm trying to remember what it's in reference to.
Time dilation.
Oh,
but
gotcha. Not somebody
just,
having a baby. Got it.
I mean, that's the double entendre that they're going for. But yeah.
That's what they do. That's what they do.
So Mariner, Tendi, and T'Lyn go on a girls' trip undercover to a pre-industrial planet of Dilmer 3, which is subject to time dilation, such that a week passes on the planet for every second on the Cerritos.
Whoops.
If you imagine that can go poorly, yes.
How else is it going to go or they wouldn't have an episode?
Exactly. Their mission is to prevent the locals from discovering Starfleet technology from yet another parallel universe.
Right.
Which turns out to be the purple head of Data.
That's not and you know what? I hope that's not a double entendre either.
I hope so.
But yeah, guest voiced by Brent Spiner, who does a great job.
Amazingly, well done and hilarious.
Yeah, sounding like 90s Data, because I notice in particular, these older actors, when they go back and they're doing a flashback scene, they're trying to do a voiceover of the way they sounded 30 years ago. They can't. It just doesn't really match up.
He does a pretty good job. Yeah. You can still tell that he's older. Yeah. There's certain consonantal sounds that you could tell, but generally he does a good job.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, Boimler and Rutherford accidentally disable the transporter. They completely fail at the no food in the transporter room rule, forcing the three women to spend a little over a year on the planet during the minute it takes to repair the transporter. Tendi believes that she's competing with T'Lyn for the position of science officer, so she desperately tries to outdo T'Lyn in scientific achievement. To do so, she reactivates Data's head in a very Times Arrow moment.
Oh, it's perfect. And that episode even gets a shout out.
It gets a shout out in this episode, which is hilarious. I mean, while T'Lyn develops innovations in the local agriculture with giant fruit,
giant grapes and stuff,
and beauty products from the fruit skins, which is just hysterical.
Oh my God.
They draw the attentions of a suspicious Dilmarian named Snell, who tries to expose them as witches. It's very Monty Python.
Witch! Yes, exactly. Yeah.
They are able to discredit him in front of the community, and after they are returned to the Cerritos before returning home to the unit. They are returned to the Cerritos, and then before returning home to his own universe, Data's head recommends Captain Freeman to promote both Tendi and T'Lyn to kind of co-chief science officer.
Exactly. Yeah. Good deal. I loved it. This was a lot of fun. And we'll go through it a little bit, and then naturally we usually give it a rating at the end. But right off the top, you get the I think it's Ransom's log at the beginning, where he's saying we're sealing another fissure, and he's like, let's seal the fizz. Because apparently they're doing them all the time, and I wrote in my note, what's the deal with these fissures? Like, Seinfeld.
I'm sure we'll find out in episode 9.
Absolutely will, and it'll have something to do with Harry Kim, because that was in the season trailer.
That's the teaser. Yep.
I do love that Mariner, who's usually at the helm these days, or helm and ops. She and Boimler tend to bop back and forth. I think she might have been sitting at ops. Because they're the thing that came and went again was the Enterprise D, but it was purple. And so she wonders if the carpet matched the hull. Oh my, just.
That was one of the double entendres in this episode are kind of like
they do refer to the Enterprise D as the purple D. I like so they have to go on a mission, and they're going to miss Taquito Night, and Mariner's bitching about it, and the captain says, "You just replicate yourself some when you get back." And she's like, well, but I like being there with the dancing and the singing, and that's funny because she's so antisocial sometimes, but not all the time. But she does. It's like the choo-choo dance, fun take with Rutherford having basically Geordie's season 5 beard, where it's a little scruff.
Oh my gosh, that was so ridiculous.
Season 5, season 6, and then Boimler's beard is he's got the goatee, and it's purple. But it's funny, and I know I mentioned this before, he says he dyes his hair. So does he? You can't really dye stubble exactly.
I guess you can in the 24th century.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Very, but very tiny.
I would just think that his hair is just purple. I don't know. watching the show's credits, and again, we get another shout out in the next episode. I finally noticed that in that last shot of the credits, where the Cerrito is at a scene where all the other ships are attacking each other, that V'ger shows up at the end because the wavy clouds.
V'ger shows up. The Tholians are doing their whole net thing.
Yeah. I loved it.
It's ridiculous.
So they're getting ready to go on the mission, and the doctor has to put the horns on them. I did love how when you look at them with the horns and the orange skin, they look like sea monkeys, like you'd see on an ad in an old comic from the 70s. I don't know. Do you know what have you ever heard of sea
Not
monkeys?
Really.
That must be before your time. I never owned them, but it's like one of those. It's one of those like fake mail away things that you would get back in the day. So you would seriously Google it, and you'll say Google comic book ad sea monkeys, and you'll see there was always one image that they used. I love it. So Mariner is talking through the time dilation. She says, like, how time slows down when I'm forced to go to a play.
Yep.
But like you said, they're in the transporter room, and this thing that they're drinking, they're called Michaelitas, but they look like just Bloody Marys with shrimp. It just makes me want to puke. I'm a simple guy when it comes to alcohol. I don't do Bloody Marys. Bloody Marys gross me out because it's tomato juice, and I'm just not fond of tomatoes. Smell of it makes me sick. I don't know. Have you ever been? Do you have a stance on Bloody Marys? Yes,
I've never had one, so I wouldn't know. I'm not. I haven't been to very many places that make adventurous drinks.
Adventurous. It's definitely a big deal for some people. Hey, if you love Bloody Marys, hit us up on social.
Yeah, let us know. I've had like a Warp Core breach, which is
me too.
But I haven't
had one at the Star Trek experience back in 1998.
And I have a book on how to make a bunch of mixed drinks, but I've never made a Bloody Mary. Never had one.
And but again, I don't know. And it's funny when I typed in the name of the drink, which is the Michaelitas, the spell checker didn't catch it. So I guess it's a real thing. Maybe. I have no idea. Or they thought it was somebody's name. I have no idea. So anyway, like you said, they beam down. They get stuck there.
And they try to clean off the console first with their shirts, which are apparently non-absorbent.
Right.
Which is hysterical.
Right.
Because it's a space material, which kind of makes sense. And then they try to lick off the panel, which there's a great comment of like, I don't think this guy washes his hands when he operates the panel. So gross.
So down on the planet, you were talking about Snell, and Snell did get the honorary name of the episode because I said, let's see here, what was the quote that I picked that I liked so much? Oh, I'm on the wrong.
Snell you later.
Snell you later is better. I might go with that, but I picked. What did I pick? Oh my God, scrolling up and down background. Snell's creepy lurking pays off. Which one do you like better?
I don't know.
I'll go with Snell you later.
I kind of like Snell you later because it definitely seems like something Mariner would say if she had seen him before they beamed out, which she didn't.
Snell you later. Obviously, so Data is spending a lot of time talking Tendi through. Mariner doesn't even get to see Data until right as they're leaving.
And T'Lyn doesn't for a long time.
Yeah, she's kind of keeping it as her secret.
Tendi just kind of keeps Data's head a secret.
Right, exactly.
But it's hilarious because they take up residence in like this abandoned old house and just like they fix it up. They attach like all sorts of like a windmill and everything to like power things. And it's like,
exactly.
You guys aren't like polluting the culture.
Nobody ever comes back to see to claim it. No. I did love Data's recollection of Time Zero. It was, Captain Picard, and some guy in his silver jumpsuit came along to dig me out, which is just an allusion to that like civilian science person, like one outfit that everybody
the silver jumpsuit with like the off silver line across the top. Yeah.
Very, it's funny because when you watch TNG, it doesn't feel, I've always felt it doesn't really feel like the original series, which is like super dated, except for when you see somebody who's not in a Starfleet uniform, and then it's just very 90s, like season 1 when they showed like
season
all
one's
the
a
kids.
Different story.
Yeah, it was just super duper 80s. So, so Mariner's on a quest to inner light herself. She's got stuff
she wants to get like a family and great friends and have this whole other life. It's like, Mariner, you're not living in the same way that Picard was. Like he was aging.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty funny.
So she does finally get locked up, and that's where she finds out
gets
she has
prison
friends.
buddies.
Yeah, and she says, "Oh, we love you, Mariner, and only 2 of us are murderers." She's like, "No, I don't need to know about that."
And there's a later point. It's like, "Oh, can my friends come with me?" No. Oh, hey, tried guys, bye.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I noted how gross the shrimp drink was. So they finally get back to the ship. Data's head. This is where I'm lost with Data's head. They do finally shoot him back through the fissure.
Yep.
But he has no body, and I don't know that they can. So does he just become like in Futurama, where he's just a head in a jar and like a?
I guess so.
Or like
maybe they find a anti-grav unit and Ant-Man him, like in one of the What If shorts.
Yeah, there.
Just a floating head with the cloak.
Exactly. So that's a story I'd like to hear more about.
Yeah.
And the episode wraps up with Mariner saying, "And I'll celebrate this by playing my beloved soap flute." And it's like a recorder that
she made a really crappy recorder in prison.
So many of us played in elementary school. So anyway,
what was also really interesting was you had this whole side plot with T'Lyn, with Tendi trying to beat T'Lyn in science, and you come to the point where T'Lyn is like, I was just trying to do science so that we could bond over something.
Oh, I know. It was very sweet. And that
was a really cool moment where he had like Tendi is like, I shouldn't be science officer because I'm missing things because I'm so competitive. And T'Lyn is like, well, I shouldn't be science officer because I'm totally missing all of these social cues, not paying attention.
Because I can't. So in the end, they both get this promotion to chief science officer because they function better as a team. One's got the passion, one's got the cold logic, and so they're like the female Kirk and Spock. It's pretty great in its own way. I rated the episode 8 out of 10. Kind of lowish stakes. You obviously knew it was going to end up working out. Nobody was really in danger, but just like we were talking about, a couple of really nice character moments. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I might give it like an 8.5 or so. I enjoyed it. I liked all of the goofy little references. I enjoyed that Data was involved.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if they're going to get another big name to sneak in there somewhere in the end, but who knows? I mean, we know Kim is, but
yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's jump into talk about episode 8, Upper Decks. I love this. We get a slice of life day in the life of the senior staff and what they do every day.
We get some really funny meta lines about it. Which is hysterical.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we get just our people introducing it, and they say, well, I wonder what happens. And then you jump right into the senior staff briefing. Freeman has a full day of schedule, running around, just being supportive of the crew. Andy Billups has to deal with a crisis in engineering, big surprise. Ransom has to manage a team of squabbling ensign, wrangling a herd of bagoons, space creatures with cloaking capabilities, and an inspection from a visiting ecologist, and it all pretty much takes place in the shuttle bay.
It's only in the shuttle bay.
Yeah. Ransom does a great job of feigning incompetence to make the ensigns like each other because it's beta shift and delta shift, and they're very competitive. So that's pretty cool. Shax's storyline is he's dealing with his repressed emotions about the occupation and his violent life, and so we get some crazy flashbacks over that. In the morning briefing, Dr. Tana is criticized for not providing enough painkillers for her patients, so she goes back to sickbay and grabs the nurse and says, I want you to zap me with everything possible so that I can recalculate the pain scale. And I do love the pain scale was hurts or other.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally fine or other.
Exactly. So
Dr. Tana, that's just no.
Yeah, if you go to a doctor's office, they have, describe to me your pain 1 to 10.
Yeah, it's at least like a 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Scale.
So the ecologist guy who's with Ransom reveals himself to be part of the alien Clickets, which I love. The Clickets is great. Aiming to use the bagoon's cloaking ability to dominate the galaxy, but the crew fights back. Freeman remembers, and is mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the Clickets hate to be complimented and praises them until they can't take it anymore, and then they run away.
Which is so
funny. And then at the end of the day, Freeman's husband arrives on the Cerritos, one of the few times that we get to see Admiral Freeman, who is stationed on Earth, currently, and celebrates her anniversary, having been invited by the captain's aide, Stevens. And I have a bit of a nit to pick about Stevens in a minute here. But yeah, fun episode.
It's such a great episode.
They kick it off by our lower deckers gang are making pumpkins, which is funny because at one point Rutherford makes one that just had the etching of the Cerrito on the front, and as I mentioned earlier, the second one has V'ger on it, I love it because it's V'ger from the special edition, which was Robert Wise's art department rendering of what V'ger is supposed to look like. I actually have a model of that from Eagle Moss.
Yeah, Eagle Moss had a really nice model of it.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But that was fun. I noticed this. Maybe I never noticed this, but Boimler and Mariner are walking down the hall, and again, we're in the first 3 to 5 minutes because
it's before the tea.
Yeah.
It's before the credits.
Yeah.
So
it's the cold open. Yeah. I noticed that when Boimler walks, he does this with his fist. I don't know. I never noticed that before. He's like,
he's been doing that since like season 1 where he was doing his like power walk in his dress uniform.
Pretty funny. My nit to pick with Stevens, who is basically the captain's yeoman. So think about Yeoman Rand, is that he's a lieutenant commander. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. He should be like a JG or an ensign.
Yeah. Or enlisted because Yeoman Rand didn't have a rank. I mean, when we see her again in Star Trek the Motion Picture, she's a chief petty officer. So it was only much later on.
Lieutenant commander in the later
films. Yeah, and because she's the first officer of Sulu's Excelsior, but that's 30 years.
That's way later.
Yeah. So she's what they call I think a shake
green gold
in the military. Yeah. So where they earn their commission kind of after the fact. So anyway, I think that's weird, but whatever. Again, I love the Clickets. They're talking about them in the briefing, and someone says they hate being complimented. And Ransom says, "Why are they so mad? Maybe somebody gave them a birthday present." I don't know. I thought that was so funny.
It was pretty funny. Like the whole room just kind of loses it, which was great.
They have a Woe Bundy chat. Peter, I don't know if you remembered Married with Children, which was a sitcom in the 80s.
I've seen a couple episodes.
Where they go, strong and brave, wise and true. That's what makes us Cerritos crew. I love that. I want to see that at a con someday, or I want to see that as a callback someday. I think that would
be funny.
Ransom is, again, he's with all these ensigns, but he's telling Boreas stories about his cultish attitude towards fitness.
He's making them hate him so that they work together, which is a method.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the best method, but it's a method.
Exactly. Billups is, I did notice that I never really paid attention to this, but the engineering set is so expansive. It's like 5 stories tall.
It's
and
huge.
Open concept. It looks like the inside of a shopping mall. It's ridiculously big with different levels, and you figure there's escalators and stuff. But he and one of his ensigns,
rappelling equipment this time.
Yeah, exactly. He and one of his ensigns have to solve they have to do with this and that. The only thing that I think that comes out of it really fun is one of the he says, well, I bought this program used off of some binars, and it has an AI defense golem, and it's this big creature that comes out of the MSD and gobbles them up.
Yep, it's an AI defense golem. It's
exactly
hilarious.
And she said, well, the only way to defeat it is to pull this plug while telling a super sad story from your childhood. It's just like
and then she gives this really lame ass thing of being left behind at a mall, and it's like, that's not sad enough.
That's not sad enough. Keep going. When the ecologist guy reveals himself as a Clicket, I don't know if you're familiar with this movie, but it's almost a shot for shot recreation from the version, The Fly, yeah. Which
that's what I was thinking it was. Yeah,
gotcha.
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of the film.
See, that's the movie that definitely traumatized. It was 10 when I came out, and I don't know why. We had a VHS tape of it in this house. It was like from Blockbuster. I'm like, why would my mother do that? But you know what?
It's really gross.
It's really super gross, and not something that a 10-year-old needs to see. I do love it when Billups thinks he's going to die. He says, "This is the way all engineers want to go at work in a tube."
And he's leaning up against the glass like Spock in Star Trek 2, which
exactly. When the Clickets are having the showdown with the captain and the yeoman, and then it's crewman Barnes who's partially transformed into a Cro-Magnon woman, how she fights him off with her bassoon, but they shoot at it. That's a bassoon, right? I keep forgetting.
I think they did call it a bassoon. Yeah, it's not a. I don't think it was a tuba.
They do the thing from it's a bassoon or a tuba. Who knows? They do the thing like from Spaceballs where the lasers go into it and shoot out the other end.
Yeah, that was
how
pretty
John
fun.
Candy does in Spaceballs. I thought that was pretty great. Yes, Ransom then declares himself a master of the lower decker mind, the lower decker's mind. So he reveals that he acts like an idiot so that people will start liking each other. So we're at a scene at the end in the bar where Mariner, they're hearing rumors of what happened during the episode,
and they don't believe it because they were not part of the episode at all.
Yeah, nothing ever happens when we aren't around. And then Mariner says, "We're the spice and glitter around here." And then they're making fun of her, like, "Hey, we saw your dad in the hallway, blah, blah, blah," because obviously the Admiral's there. And T'Lyn gets the last word, which is done as a voiceover seeing the ship from the outside. She said, "I have made a joke at your expense." Boom.
Yeah, that was my favorite line. Yeah. It was very silly.
It was pretty good. This was a 10 out of 10 for me. I mean, the fourth wall breaking. They took a concept that was, I won't say it's way overdue, but it's great that they got it in before the end because, again, there's no other Star Trek show where you follow a bunch of, young idiots doing whatever, and they're all doe-eyed, and they're like, "Oh, gee, we love being in Starfleet, blah, blah." It's always, the senior officers, and it's, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beaming down to do something, or Riker and Worf and Data are, getting in the thick of it. It's not even Mariner says it like, most ships, don't have a bunch of random lower deckers running around doing stuff. And the argument was, well, our senior officer, our commanders are pretty cool. And she says, yeah, they're
really boring. They don't do anything interesting. We're the main characters. They don't do anything.
Exactly. So yeah, I loved it. This was a fun one for me. Any other thoughts?
I thought it was really funny, especially all the beginning and end jokes of like, hey, we're the main characters. Nothing ever happens when we're not here. And then you have this whole episode that is taking place without them. Like they're not even on screen at all. Yeah, which is just really, really funny.
They're just as Boimler's walking around pumping his fist. So
yeah, it's it's the show digging at itself, but also digging at Star Trek in general. Just being absolutely, it's really, really funny.
That's good stuff. So yeah, that's it. I can't believe we only have 2 more episodes to talk about. And then I probably have mentioned we're going to do a serious retrospective the week after that. I'm working on lining up a guest, maybe somebody pretty big. I've asked kind of some big names to join us because I've been meeting more people recently, and I don't want to drop any names because I think that would be kind of gauche. I don't want to do that. But I am working on it to have somebody join Peter and myself to talk about wrapping up the series here in segment 1. And speaking of wrapping up, we are now poised to wrap up season 6 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So yeah, again, this was on when I was in high school. This was my religion. I absolutely loved it. It was my thing. Peter, when did you start watching, like mindfully watching Star Trek: The Next Generation? Refresh me.
Well, apparently I started watching it probably right around this time, if not a little earlier. I was one of those children that had my fingers under the door wanting to watch it when it was on.
You've said.
So, yeah. I don't remember any of it, but apparently I did watch a good chunk of it.
That reminds me of the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater. I've told the story a million times, was The Empire Strikes Back. It was me and my dad and my brother. I was 4 years old. And the only thing that I remember from it is back in those days, they didn't really have previews. The screen was just an out of focus white picket fence, and we played rock, paper, scissors until the movie came on. Don't know anything about the movie at all. But yeah.
Empire Strikes Back was also the first one that I saw, but it was the special edition.
Oh, my goodness.
That was the first one I saw in the theaters.
That's funny. So at any rate, we are deep in the spring of 1993. I will get us started with episode 20, which is The Chase, which I feel like we've talked about before because it was the basis for season 5 of Star Trek Discovery, which just wrapped up earlier this year. Jonathan Frakes doing the directing, so it's exceptional. And you got the big hitters right in this. Ron Moore and Joe Menosky doing the story, with Menosky doing the teleplay. Picard tries to solve an ancient genetic mystery uncovered by his archaeologist mentor, not archaeological like the guy was a mummy, mentor, and faces stiff competition. Stiff competition, mummy. Come on.
It writes itself.
The guest star who plays Professor Galen is Norman Lloyd, who is an old-timey actor, but again, it's kind of, these summaries are so weird to me. The things that they find are important. So, again, it's an interesting episode because that's exactly it. It's a chase. The Enterprise, Professor Galen comes visiting. He wants Picard to leave Starfleet and join him. Picard wrestles with it, but ultimately says no. So it puts a rift between the two men. the guy leaves. His shuttlecraft gets caught by a Uridian, and then he ends up getting shot and dies. And Picard's like, I'm going to take over his mission. And they have to go from this place to that place to this place to that place to get clues to put together this puzzle that Galen was working on. And along the way, they first run into a Klingon who's played by an actor whose name is on the tip of my tongue, but he's a regular Star Trek guest star, but he's in the Klingon makeup. At the same time, they run into two Cardassians, the first female Cardassian gull that I think we see. Though we do, because this was season 6.
And I think this is the only female Cardassian we see in uniform. Because I don't think we see any female Cardassians in military uniform in Deep Space Nine. Not that I recall.
I mean, they could have snuck one in there during the
but not in any named or in the front or anywhere.
Somebody in the background. We do get obviously other Cardassian women, including.
We get a bunch, but we just don't see any in the military uniform.
We do get, and I'm sure we talked about this when but in an episode where Quark is in love with a Cardassian from his past. It's actress Mary Crosby, who's Denise Crosby's sister, and the woman who shot Jr. Was also a Cardassian. The Cardassian, they finally they combine all the puzzle pieces. They get to the final
Romulans
stop.
show up at the end.
Romulans show up, and then they Picard is able to like take a tube and scrape off a little bit of the seabed at this planet they're at, and it gives him the final bit and puts it on the tricorder, and the tricorder projects. This was before Salome Jens was our female shapeshifter, comes out as a projection of a character that looks exactly like the female shapeshifter, almost to a T, just skins a little
sans hair.
Yeah, exactly. Who comes and says, we're the progenitors, we spread our DNA around, which sounds gross, spread our DNA around. We spread around our samples around, the universe bazillions of years ago, and you guys are all related by. And I love the reaction the Klingons said, that's it? If she wasn't dead, I would kill her. Everybody's really pissed to think that
Cardassians are like, I can't be possibly related to that. Ugh, and they leave. The Romulans just like, nah.
Everybody kind of shrugs their shoulders and takes off, although Picard does have kind of a meaningful conversation over subspace with the Romulan, who says, well, it was almost like the Romulan didn't want to talk about his feelings when the whole thing was going on because everybody was kind of being a dick. And he was like, well, that's very interesting, and maybe we'll run into each other again. You never see this guy again. But it was kind of I think illustrative how Romulans, even though they're kind of ruthless, are a little bit more thoughtful than the savage Klingons or the savage Cardassians.
It shows their Vulcan roots.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. So great episode, without a doubt. And again, it obviously made enough of an impression on the writer's room of Discovery that they wanted to push the plot line of that one forward. But again, the less Peter and I talk about Discovery, kind of the better. I don't want to drag Discovery. I know a lot of people really love it. It's just not really for us, which is okay. Yeah. That's what makes Star Trek so great, particularly now in what I will call kind of the second golden era we're living in, is that there are people who are, we're kind of classicists, as classical lovers. We're kind of in the middle because we enjoy TOS, but we're really pretty hardcore with the 90s stuff. And then some of the newer stuff, a lot of it's kind of take it or leave it. I've been rewatching Star Trek Picard, and I have a different appreciation for it. I just started season 3, which is so insanely good. It's hard to have on in the background and because it's distracting. I'm like, I have a little TV in my office, and I'm like, I might stop for a second. And I'm like, well, I'm between these two projects, but I'm going to watch the scene. You know what I mean? So, but I had a better appreciation for seasons 1 and 2, so kind of grows with time. So, all right. Other thoughts before we move on?
I always kind of laughed at this episode. It's well done, but I always kind of laughed at it because it was the episode that tried to explain why everyone looks like a human with a rubber forehead.
Right.
Why is everyone bipedal? Why are they all mammalian? Why do they all do all this and have
eyes
this?
And noses and ears
all in the same places and only 4 limbs? And so I thought that this was one of the classic examples, which then Star Trek Enterprise took up later with the Klingon explanation,
right? Of
just trying to it's a TV show and it's kind of got its conceits and it's kind of dumb. Let's give a little bit of technobabble reasoning as to why,
right?
And it also gives kind of there's a little bit of social commentary in there of we're all different, but ultimately we're all the same.
The family of man, yes,
the family of man kind of idea, yeah. So it's it doesn't have a lot to say because it's all buried under a lot of pseudo scientific mumbo jumbo and a lot of aliens being dumb, like headbutting Data, because that's smart.
Yeah, that was great. The Klingon guy who's trying to bribe Data and then wants to do the classic Klingon headbutt game.
Yeah, but other than that, it's like it's a pretty solid episode.
Yeah,
has some decent character stuff.
Peter, the cops are coming for you. I can hear it.
Oh yeah, there's a police station a block away from us, so we hear it all the time.
Really, just a block off the bridge of the Enterprise D? That's so weird. I didn't know that they measured.
Yeah, space cops. You never know.
City blocks. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, episode 21 is yours. So go for it.
Oh yes, episode 21. One of the interesting ones. Frame of Mind. Directed by James L. Conway, written by Brandon Braga, aired on May 3rd of 93. Riker finds himself prisoner in an alien mental institution that resembles scenes from Crusher's play, also known as Inception.
But, almost 20 years beforehand.
But way before,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's this really strange thing where you start... Riker's practicing this play, and then they're like, okay, we need to be done. You go to bed, we're done for now. And then we're going to go do this away mission where we have to go undercover. And then that's kind of where we lose what's going on, because all of a sudden we're now
all over the place. Yeah.
Back in the cell from the play. And so this thing keeps bouncing back and forth between Riker's in the cell reliving like the same scene that we see from the beginning with some variations. And then he's back on the Enterprise, and it's slowly him kind of losing his mind of like, he's got this cut that keeps popping up. First it's Worf does it, then it's something random, and then it appears in other places. And so eventually you figure out ultimately in the thing that Riker got captured by these aliens, and they're trying to read his mind, and he is subconsciously fighting it.
Right.
And that's what all of this bouncing back and forth is. And so eventually he takes like a phaser and shoots himself, and that kicks him out of this dream. He wakes up.
Yeah, then he wakes up and he
blasts the people who have captured him, and then beams back to the Enterprise and is safe. But then in an interesting moment at the end, like after his debrief and everything, he's sitting there with Dr. Crusher, and he's like, okay, he's still in this set wherever it is. It's a redress of 10 forward, but wherever this thing is supposed to be. And he's like, I won't sleep well until I know that this place is gone.
Yeah,
and so the show ends with him tearing this set down, which is an interesting moment for him.
Yeah,
because you have to know that something. It's like, I have to know that this is real, and if this is no longer here, then I can be assured. So it's an interesting episode. It's definitely weird.
Yeah, it's good, and it's definitely good. At this later part of the series when they can do weird, much like with Lower Decks, with the Upper Decks episode, they're doing something different. The show is starting to kind of wind down, so they've got to kind of take some chances. I know watching it at first, as a 17-year-old kid, who had an appreciation of good storytelling, that I was trying to figure out exactly which part of it was actually happening.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. I think they definitely played it well. And obviously the stakes are always the same on a weekly TV series, particularly of this era. Somehow it's going to work out. It's like, I was watching Picard season 2, and he has that whole dream sequence where he's reliving, his childhood, and Gaius Baltar is this Starfleet counselor who's talking to him, who actually ends up being his dad. And so it's like, the mind is messing with you. So but again, ultimately the stakes were lower. You knew that in the end he was going to be okay, but it was kind of a wild ride. So I liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as an episode. It's not one that I will like go out of my way to find it, especially if I'm having a weird day.
Yeah.
But it's not one that I'm going to be like, ugh, I'm not going to watch this one. So
yeah, right.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's a perfectly serviceable wagon story from the Simpsons musical. All right, episode 22 is Suspicions. Cliff Bole doing the directing. Joe Manoski and Niran Shankar doing the story for May of 93. Dr. Crusher risks her career to solve the murder of a Ferengi scientist, Dr. Rega, and vindicate his research. First and foremost, Ferengi scientist, again, nice departure. I commend them for trying to give poor Beverly something to do. I mean, there are 5 episodes in the entire series where they give her any kind of story. There's Remember Me, where she's stuck in a pocket universe. There's the host, where we meet the Trill for the first time, and she's in love with the Trill. There's this one, and God help me when we get to Sub Rosa, because it's coming, but we're gonna have to talk about it. You know, one of the most frequent. I used to listen to this podcast a couple of years back where they would just drag the producers of TNG for giving the women characters nothing to do. And when they gave the women characters something to do, it was always something phenomenally stupid. This
of the enemy's good.
Yeah.
There's
this one, thinking about Dr. Crusher, I'm not going to say what did I name? 4 episodes. Did I miss one? Was there other episodes that, well, there was the High Ground where she was kidnapped. So that's 5.
Yeah. There's also the episode where she's in the bubble universe, and that one's good.
I mentioned that one.
Yeah. That one's actually that one's good. I like that.
Right. That one's good. The one with the Trill, I think, is not bad. Sub Rosa is obviously the gold standard of horrible. So I would put this one probably in that bottom half because I don't know. I did like the Ferengi scientist. You also had the Klingon scientist, who was actually played by the same actress who played Rachel Garrett, the captain of the Enterprise C. It was the same actress whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. And another appearance by actor James Horan, which cracks me up because I have an uncle, James Horan, but obviously not this guy. So yeah, he's the guy who was ultimately the culprit at the end. And the science project is this metaphasic shield, which we then end up seeing in season 7.
Next season, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it is proven technology. So I guess it was an all right whodunit. Maybe I wouldn't necessarily put it in that bottom tier.
Yeah, I think it's fine. There's definitely the framing of the first half is definitely weird.
Right.
Where you have,
because it's all told.
Dr. Crusher is like, I am losing my job. I have to go do an inquiry. And Guinan shows up and tries to get her to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, works, but it's a strange storytelling choice. Right. I think I wouldn't necessarily have done it that way, but it works.
Is this the last time we see Guinan during the regular show? I think it might be.
I think this might be the last time we see her until Generations. Yeah,
exactly. And
I don't think she really shows up in season 7.
And then we see her again in Nemesis at the wedding, and then we saw her several times in season 2 of Picard.
Yeah, and then I think we see her in season 3. Maybe
they're in the bar, but I'm not sure. I don't think we see her.
She might not be there.
Yeah. So yeah, this is it's kind of a sour note that they kind of waste Whoopi being on, because she was on set for probably a day, maybe half a day of the typical 6-day shoot session that they have for one of these episodes. So yeah, kind of a waste with kind of being so I kind of marked the episode down for that, but they needed her to tell her story to somebody, but it could just as easily have been Troy, even though Guinan does one of her trademarks. Well, why don't you do something about it? And that's when Crusher's like, yes, I will do something about it.
And then there's the classic at the end of like, hey Guinan, I got this for you, so I wasn't really hurt, I just wanted to help.
Exactly.
Like, classic Guinan.
Yeah, it's like, that would be one of the freeze frames of today's sitcoms. Would be like,
pretty much.
Pointing the finger. So yeah, not a stellar episode, but again, they give Beverly so little to do over the course of 7 years that at least this isn't the worst episode by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, she does get to do a pretty solid amount in Descent Part 2 at the beginning of the next season.
Right. They do. So. You're absolutely right. That would probably be the high point. And then she does have some great stuff in the anti-time future of the finale, where she's also she's a captain, which they except the table for that.
Deanna isn't in there at all. So.
Yeah, exactly. Deanna's not there to help. All right. Episode 23 is you.
Episode 23, Rightful Heir. Directed by Winrick Colby, story by James E. Brooks, teleplay by Ronald E. Moore. Aired May 17th of 93. Worf experiences a crisis of faith and travels to the Klingon holy site of Boreth, where the mythic figure Kahless returns to lead the Klingon people.
Klingon Jesus, dun dun dun. Sorry, you're a more religious guy than me, but I think Klingon Jesus it's accurate. It gives everybody a big smile.
It's completely accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's accurate in a lot more ways than one, because this is a great episode. Number one, Ron Moore. I was never more disappointed than the 2 chances I've missed to meet Ron Moore. One was at Star Trek Las Vegas. He canceled. The other one was at the Battlestar thing, which was a couple of months ago in Chicago when he was there on a Friday, and I certainly could have made it there. I really want to meet this guy, and I would do a photo op and I would do an autograph. I would pay that money, and I'm not a photograph and autograph guy, but this guy is one of my favorite entertainment writers of all time. He wrote the book on Klingon stuff. He's the
Pretty
guy,
much, yeah.
So he does a great, and again, Worf is the character that we see the most in all of Star Trek. So on 7 seasons of this, 4 seasons of TNG, 4 movies, and then most of the 3rd season of Picard. So he's like the guy. But this, I think, is pretty pivotal because, it all has to do with there's these Klingon clerics, one of which is played by actor Alan Oppenheimer, who later comes back next season in DS9 as the captain of the Odyssey and gets blown up when we first meet the Jem'Hadar. He's that guy. But he's the lead guy. Turns out Kahless coming back, you're not seeing my air quotes if you're not watching us on YouTube or on our Patreon, coming back as a clone. So he gets beamed in front of Worf and he's like, I have returned. It's
a very funny moment because you have especially because the first time you see them on Boreth, after you have the opening where Worf is upset about something and he asks for leave and so then he goes.
Right.
But you have this moment where you have this 17-year-old Klingon who's I have seen Kahless and blah blah blah. He wants me to. He says that my place is assured in Stovokor or whatever, and it's
it's so
okay.
Cool. Yeah,
it definitely it's one of those moments of okay, is this actually a vision or are you just because you're also in a hot room and you're dehydrated? Are you just hallucinating? Because that's definitely kind of the implication that they're giving.
Smoking that Klingon bong, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I would say
because especially there's a point where Worf is sitting there and he's kind of whoa. So, but yeah, you have the same kid is next to him, and Kahless appears, and so because they had this kid lose his crap earlier,
right?
They also show you Worf sees him, and the other kid is
and Worf is I'm not really buying this bullshit. And and then we get Bob O'Reilly as Gowron.
Yeah, Gowron comes back, and there's kind of a kerfuffle about who's gonna should Gowron hand over the Empire to Kahless because Kahless is the true leader of the Klingon people,
right? Because
he's not exactly their messiah in the same sense, but he said that he would return, and so it's here he is. He's here to lead us, and Gowron's not buying it. Worf does for a while because they determined that DNA matches. He's a Klingon. He's not a hologram. He's not all this, that, and the other.
It's all on the level scientifically, but it's interesting that even after it's exposed that he's a clone, which he is, there are Klingons who are still praying in this holodeck shrine. And so Worf says, "Well, it's the Klingons have lost their way. They need something." So they cut a backroom deal. They say Kahless will be the emperor, but he'll be a figurehead.
They basically turn him into Klingon Pope.
Yeah, exactly.
Where he doesn't lead anything
without the hat.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't fit on his head.
Absolutely not.
They basically make him into the leader, the spiritual leader of the Klingon people, the cultural leader, and then Gowron and the High Council still lead the politics and everything. It's unfortunate that this particular situation is never addressed again, in Deep Space Nine or anywhere else.
He does get a name drop, and by the way, the name of this episode is now Snell You Later and the Klingon Pope, because I can't put down the Klingon Pope. That's awesome. He gets a name drop when Worf goes to DS9 for the first time, and Worf's like, the Cardassian invasion's happening. I've called the High Council. I've called Kahless, and nobody is returning my calls.
Yeah, so Kahless is still around, but we just don't really see much of him later. Star Trek Online actually brings him back for something.
Okay. Gotcha.
Spoilers. It doesn't end well.
Spoilers. How would you expect? You do get in season 4 of DS9, they go to find the sword of Kahless in the Gamma Quadrant, where we have John Cochleos's core returning again, but still no Kahless. And he gets a name drop in that too, because Core is making fun of, there's a clone emperor sitting on the throne and nobody gives a shit. So it seems like most of the hardcore hardliners don't think a lot of him, but probably for a lot of the rabble, your everyday whatever, it's it's good enough. he serves a purpose.
He's a focal point that everyone can come around. Like there's the one thing that I thought that this was an interesting exploration into that religious side of the Klingons.
Right.
I didn't really like some of the end of the episode. Not the conclusion. The conclusion, like with how they figured out how to work it all out, that was fine.
Yeah.
But particularly Worf's spiritual crisis is not fully resolved.
Right.
And I don't really like how it ended, because it's a little. There's not really a nice way to put it, but it's somewhat dismissive of the religious experience, for the character, but then just in general,
right?
Where there's the line, because we're because we're making the comparison, because it's who he's based on, right?
Right.
It's saying like, does it matter if Kahless was real? We only need to follow his teachings. Maybe the words matter more than the man,
but they still are focusing on the man.
Right, but that's the last thing that Kahless 2 says to Worf. And speaking as a person speaking as a person of with religion, it seems a bit dismissive.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I understand, but I don't like it. I don't have to appreciate it.
You know what, and that's the beauty of it too. And all of this, as we were just talking about, Star Trek is many things to many people. There are shows that speak to some people that other people can't stand. There are episodes that speak to some people that other people don't like parts of it.
And there's things that you can see, like there's meaning in episodes that someone of faith is going to get out of it. There's episodes where if where you don't like that and you're going to read and like maybe you like Rightful Heir for that reason.
Right.
That's fine. Like you can get more out of episodes. It's just I just wanted to point out that there is a dismissive factor in here that was something that happened in the 90s in general with science fiction.
Very true. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Agreed. All right. The next episode is a particular favorite of mine because it is a Riker and it is a heavy Troy episode, and in some ways kind of spoke to a childhood romance of my own that I loved. Episode 24 is Second Chances, directed by LeVar Burton. The story writer is Michael A. Medlock, not a name I recognize, so this could have come out of the Slush script. But the teleplay is by Renee Echevarria, which
keep wanting to say Matt Murdock when I see it.
Matt Murdock. Well, maybe it was Matt Murdock. That's just a pen name. But anyway, it was brought up to specs, obviously, by Renee because he's the chief show-running dude. For May of 93, Riker encounters a duplicate of himself, Thomas Riker, created by a transporter malfunction 8 years prior on a planet. Thomas comes aboard the ship and vies for Deanna's affections because 8 years ago he was hot to trot for Deanna. So, I like this very much. Riker and Troy have a great friendship. They have probably the greatest. One of the greatest friendships in all of Star Trek history. It was a romance. It cooled to a friendship, and then it returns to a romance.
It reblossomed and
far on down the road. But they're also so wonderfully supportive of each other. Like Riker is having a romance, Troy is having a romance. It was like in the episode The Price with that creepy Betazoid guy who was trying to throw it in Riker's face that he was sleeping with her, and he was like, you know what? If you're making her happy, that makes me happy. But you're a dick. I can just tell because of the way you're talking to me. But she's my friend and I care about her, but she's a grown-up and I'm going to let her do her own thing.
Yeah, she's allowed to make her own decisions. If I had anything to do with it, you'd be out the airlock, but that's not my decision.
Exactly correct. So I do really like this, and it's funny. There's a great, in addition to all of the stuff that happens in this that's really great, because initially Deanna is very resistant, but then she does give in and their romance kind of blossoms. We get to the third act, and there's some interesting stuff that happens. I love that one of the great Data and Worf moments happens in this, where Data's like, Lieutenant, I'm curious. If you met a duplicate of yourself, do you think you would like that person? He says, no. And Data says, why? I am not easy to get along with. And Data goes,
Yeah, and that's it. That's the end.
Exactly. He says, but the two Rikers are very easy to get along with, so why don't they like each other? He says, well, maybe it's a matter of seeing something in yourself, your duplicate, that you don't like about yourself, but you're seeing it because they're doing it, which is also reflective of the the poker scene that happens
Yes.
in the previous act, which I thought was very well done.
It's like, how did you know I was bluffing? I've practiced that look in the mirror a ton of times.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the rest of the last act is kind of clunky because the two the two Rikers have to walk across a bridge, which is obviously going to collapse, so that they can put the thing on the other things. Because the whole purpose is they're back there to get these data logs from this abandoned outpost. It's very thin, and then the bridge collapses, and
it's very MacGuffin-y.
And the yellow Riker has to save the red Riker because they're wearing different colored uniforms. And I always did like how Thomas Riker, his hair was parted in the opposite direction, and his beard was fuller. Which is interesting. He also somehow mastered to give himself a haircut on a regular basis, but had weirdly tattered rags. Like he had a torn up version of the season 1 jumpsuit, but then like this gray whatever. Like, so you figured he probably cobbled clothes together over time. But it was it's an episode I like very much, but obviously you can see the flaws in it. But absolutely great scene with Riker in Troy in 10 Forward, when she's going to see Will and he knows what's going on, and she says, if I got out instead of him, don't you think he would have made the same choices that I made? Which was, back then he decided to move on with his career as opposed to pursuing a relationship with her, and that's why they're not together. And ultimately, that's what happens. He wants to get his career back on track. He's going to get a posting, ask her to go and marry him, but she says, I'm not ready for that. I'm not, she's older and wiser too. She's not just going to get swept away. So we have kind of a fun moment at the end with the two Rikers that Will Riker gives the other Will Riker, who picks the name Thomas, which we find out for a fact is his middle name, gives him the trombone and then goes off to be on this other ship. We do get Thomas Riker back in DS9, which we've talked about in the past, because he joins the Maquis, steals the Defiant, and then
goes to prison. And
he romances Kira in the time in between, which just proves that he's the biggest Mac Dad of all of Star Trek. He puts Kirk to shame. Anybody who can romance Major Kira in one episode, when she's like the hardest hardcore of any character in all of Star Trek, is pretty goddamn impressive in my opinion.
We haven't seen her go up against Kirk because she was relegated to the Defiant during that episode.
Right, yeah, because she was pregnant. He probably still would have hit on her though. So anyway.
Well, in the episode, there would have been a purpose for it because he's not trying to save the ship. But.
Exactly. So anyway, one of my favorite episodes of the series, not because it's super great, but super great for, like I said, the very clunky last act. But I love the exploration of my favorite Star Trek character. I love the dissection of his relationship with his ultimate soulmate. Everything except for the end worked for me.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. It's a solid episode. There's some really interesting character development. There's some really interesting Riker wrestling with who he is, both Thomas and Will, which is kind of a cool moment. And the way that Deanna has to bounce off of both of them is she acts as an interesting foil between the two, which is an interesting function for her character, which is something different that she doesn't get to do very often. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, the ending is a bit. It's just clunky. It was kind of like, we had this really interesting story, but we have to wrap it up. How do we wrap it up?
Like, we got 6 minutes. We got to do something.
10 minutes, and we got to do something fast. I'm like,
yeah. Well,
so it's one of those that it probably should have had like a second part.
Yeah.
Or not like part 1, part 2, but like have him be on the ship and then show back up in a later episode so they could resolve some more stuff. Like that probably would have been a better storytelling idea. But that's not how TNG worked at this point. They didn't have the idea of doing arc episodes that were not sequential, or numbered.
It was very much kind of plot of the week.
Deep Space Nine started to get the arc stuff where they weren't necessarily numbered, but they were still sequential.
Right.
It was not until like Enterprise where we started to get like episodes that were like they were still the same story, but they were episodes apart.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of scary, which was more the storytelling time. One quick bit before we move on. There's a very famous bit, and it's in my red Star Trek: The Next Generation companion, which is off to my left here. There was early talk of killing off Will Riker and leaving Thomas Riker.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Data becoming first officer, Thomas Riker being the operations guy, and just having an incredibly different dynamic across the board with the show. Ultimately, producers felt it was kind of a bridge too far, and they didn't end up going in that direction.
Yeah, they may have been toying with it as an idea to like breathe new life into the show to give it life past like season 7. Right. I'm glad that they didn't do that. Yeah, it would have changed the dynamic a little too much, I think.
Exactly, and it's good that they ended up figuring that out. So, all right, episode 25 is yours.
Episode 25, Timescape, directed by Adam Nimoy.
Adam!
Written by Brandon Braga, aired June 14th of 93. The Enterprise is caught in temporal stasis and on the brink of destruction by a Romulan warbird. Geordi, Deanna, Data, and Captain Picard have to figure out how to solve this problem.
I know. Oh, what a this is one I like very, very much.
I love this episode.
Yeah, this was great. And again, Adam, we talked to him.
Peter we touched on this episode very briefly.
And it was funny. I actually was in my local comic shop, Argos Comics, which is here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Roger and Crystal, go shop there if you're able to, because they're wonderful folks. But I was picking up some comics a couple of weeks ago, and Roger had found a lenticular trading card of Timescape. Which he just gifted me because he knew I was a big fan. And it was right after you and I had talked to Adam. I emailed Adam and I said, hey, if by hook or by crook someday you and I ever meet in person, this would be my gift to you. And he didn't email me back for a while. So I'm like, does he think I'm a creepy stalker? And eventually he emailed back and said, thank you very much. It was great chatting with you, yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, okay, good. Because I was a little freaked out that I like took it too far. But great episode. We do also get the famous Picard pointing at, because what happens is because time's frozen, the warp core breaches and the coolant is shooting out of the engine, and there's a cloud in Geordi's little office area in
it's just outside of it. Yeah,
it's just and Picard is starting to kind of he's succumbing to what temporal narcosis, which is like nitrogen narcosis divers get, and he's pointing at the cloud and there's a little smiley face in it. That's pretty terrific.
Yeah, he's drawn a smiley face in the cloud.
He's chuckling at it. So but lots of cool moments because you're trying to figure out what's going on, how, because the Enterprise was going to blow up. How are they going to get out of this? What's going on with the Romulans? And this was great. Deanna got a call back to her time on a Romulan warbird. He says, well, the Romulans use a forced quantum singularity as a power source. I'm like, she learned that in the episode where she was actually on a ship. So
this is the episode that I refer back to when people talk about how there's no other ways to power starships other than dilithium. Exactly.
And it was that forced quantum singularity which was attracted these aliens that caused the whole problem. So obviously, eventually, our people figure it out. This was the lone appearance of the runabout in Star Trek: The Next Generation that was shot during the first season of DS9. And I did read that TNG's budget paid for the back room that our characters spend a lot of their time in, kind of the lounge area that's in the back of the runabout, which ironically is never seen in DS9. So
which is super strange.
Glad that they built it. Really weird that they never used it, because by the time they got to the third season of DS9, they brought in the Defiant, and that's where all the action happened. The runabouts were just turned into shuttlecraft, so nobody really cared. Where in the first two seasons of DS9, they were a big deal because
they used them all the time.
Yeah, they were. It was a big deal. That's how they got around, because they didn't have any other way to do it. So fun episode. Again, it's, the stakes are kind of low because clearly they're not going to kill everyone and blow up the ship. So, but it's how do we fix this? Because in the one scene, Beverly gets shot by a disruptor, and they have to figure out how to turn time back. They turn time backwards and forwards a couple of different times, and ultimately they have to blow up that runabout to stop the power transfer that makes the Enterprise blow up. So it was great. Yeah. We also get, because Data's gone, Riker is watching Spot, and it was the cold open. Riker is getting his big cut on his head cleaned up by Beverly, and I like it.
He tells him not to play Parisi's squares. And that's not where this came from.
I like it. He explains the whole thing that Spot attacks him when he goes to feed him, and Beverly says, "Well, I would be happy to take over," and she says, "Okay, you'll need this," and he tosses her a phaser. That was pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh, please don't phaser Spot.
Please don't stun Spot. But it was still really funny.
Yeah, this was played out. This was really well played out. It was a fun episode. Yeah. Again, kind of lower stakes, but still.
Yeah, and it's got some good stuff with the Romulans, where you have the Romulans who are willing to work with Starfleet to try to solve this problem, because this is something that happened and they weren't planning on it, and Enterprise came to help.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Exactly correct.
Yeah,
all right.
It's a good episode.
Yeah, totally. All right. We're going to take it home with a cliffhanger. Episode 26 is Descent, Part 1. One of the few episodes that shows a title card before the credits. I don't know if you ever noticed that. I'd like to show the episode name as part of the cold open. Very rare.
I don't think I noticed that.
Aha. The crew encounter a group of... Alexander Singer does the directing. Story by Jerry Taylor. The late Jerry Taylor, who passed away not that long ago, also co-creator of Star Trek Voyager. Teleplay by Ron D. Moore, so you got two of the big wigs. From June of 93, the crew encounters a group of Borg acting individually and violently, and Data briefly experiences emotion. Professor Stephen Hawking makes a guest appearance. So he was in this, and he was in The Big Bang Theory. I don't know what his other credits are, but I like them better.
The man was a huge Star Trek fan and managed to get himself a cameo, which is hilarious.
Exactly. And it's it was terrific. Yeah, because Data is having it's weird because Data's playing poker with him, Einstein, and is it Newton? Yeah. And he's playing in his quarters, which is actually on the holodeck. So I'm like, why wouldn't he? This goes to show you the Data's not that imaginative. Why wouldn't he just pick a more exciting place to play poker with these guys? I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
Budgetary reasons for real, but they could have used the set from, I don't know, Time Zero a few episodes ago.
Exactly. That would have been great. This is Yeah, exactly. They had a really cool action sequence which bled from the cold open, and it jumps over the credits that it's a firefight with the Borg. And it's funny because Data opens a door and he opens it up. There's a Borg standing there. Jump to the opening credits, and then it comes right back, and Data just lifts up his phaser and shoots the Borg. Just and I will never forget the line by Elizabeth Dennehy, the actress who played Shelby, who we interviewed in the Spotlight many years ago, who was quoted as, again, in my red Star Trek Next Generation compendium, is that shooting a phaser is like shooting something with a remote control for your TV. That's kind of what Data looked like in that moment to me. Yep. But yeah, he's having these random emotions. The one Borg who they capture is manipulating him. It comes right back to the events of the episode I, Borg and Hugh from back in season 5.
Admiral Nechayev shows up to complain at Picard about that.
Yeah, she really, really rides him about that, about the fact that he had the chance to give Hugh a virus that would kill all the Borg and didn't do it. So then the Borg have this weird, crazy ship that never really gets explained where it came from, but it doesn't really matter. That they do combat with. They go through this tunnel. They end up, 65 light years from outside of Federation space on this planet, which is the sepia tone planet. Did you notice it was like really sepia? Like they really ratcheted it up.
Newt Caprica.
Yeah, like Newt Caprica, exactly. Which is funny because the Hugh virus storyline comes back in Battlestar Galactica in season 3, one of the episodes you and I will be talking about soon.
Yep.
On the Patreon. So eventually the bad Borg guy convinces Data to take him in a shuttle pod, and they end up on the sepia tone planet, and everybody goes. It's kind of weird. They go there, and Picard says, I want every single person on the ship to look for Data on foot on the planet. We're going to use all of the shuttlecraft to go over the planet and try to track him down because the sensors don't work.
Which is a lot of shuttlecraft. The Enterprise D has like 40 shuttlecraft.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, one of my favorite YouTube videos is somebody created the main shuttle bay.
Oh, I have a program that lets me do it. I can walk around it and fly the shuttles. I can share it with you if you want. Please.
I absolutely love that, and I have that put away in my and I share it every once in a while in one of our Discords because I love it so much. But eventually, so everybody beams down. He gives command of the ship to Beverly, which is great. Again, it's just great to see Beverly have something to do. So now she's in command, and Picard goes down, and he's in a group with him and Geordi and Deanna, and like. Ensign Ricky, who's a good, they always say, oh, the red shirts, this guy has a gold suit. And yes, he's not going to make it because they find the Borg habitat, the Borg swarm them, they kill Ensign Ricky. So it's just the three of them. And you get one of the great cliffhanger moments of the series, is that you see who you think is Data step out. He's wearing a really weird uniform that kind of looks like a dancer's uniform, but it's got like a weird like waist from like top to front where it kind of looks like he's wearing a diaper. And they go, Data, and he goes, nope. And you're way off. And Picard immediately figures out that it's Lore. And then Data steps out from around the corner and says, the sons of Sung have joined together, and together we will destroy the Federation. Have a nice summer. It was over.
Yep.
Awesome cliffhanger moment.
It was a great cliffhanger.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. And again, being as somebody who was watching the show very religiously, pardon the expression, at this point, this was definitely a source of anxiety, particularly because we didn't get the show back till September. So Star Trek does great with cliffhangers. And this was nothing will ever certainly match the power of the Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2. But I thought of the other cliffhangers we've had, this would have been
this one was probably the best.
Yeah, definitely.
In Next Generation, I don't know. Although I'm not really. I don't. Other than Scorpion, I'm not sure that there was like another cliffhanger. Oh, well, the cliffhanger between Enterprise season 3 and 4 is a pretty big one too.
Yeah, that's also one of my favorite. And the end of season 5 of DS9. Going into the quadrilogy that starts season 6 with the Dominion War. Absolutely loved it. I thought they totally nailed it. Created a lot of suspense. All the answers weren't there. Hugh Borg was nowhere in sight, but you still got the feeling that maybe he had something to do with it. And of course, after this, we won't get back to talking about this until we
circle back.
Yeah, we circle back, which will. It's taking less and less time because not every
TNG, Voyager, Deep Space Nine got this far.
Yeah, exactly. So once we finish with that, we'll be finished with talking about the series, and then we have plans to eventually come back and start over again because there's more Star Trek to talk about. So I thought this was absolutely awesome. They did well. I was excited and I was pumped to obviously see how it concluded. So yeah.
I think there's an interesting moment in there where Data starts to be concerned about his own morality, where he starts like, if the only emotions that I can feel are bad, does that make me a bad person? Right. And I thought that was an interesting reflection on Data's part, in part because like you look at everything else that Data has done, and it's like, Data, who you are isn't defined by what you feel, right? It's not your emotions that make you who you are. You feel whatever you feel, but it depends on what you act on. And everything that you've acted on so far that we've seen through the last 6 years has been really solid. Yeah. So it's one of those interesting moments where it's like, Data, I see why you're having this problem, but we also have to look at like who you are as a person without the emotions, and without the emotions, you are a good person. So I don't think you have that much to worry about. Right. So it was just an interesting moment. I thought it was worth mentioning.
Oh, I totally agree. Good deal. All right. Well, let's, out of this 7-pack, let's pick a favorite and the least favorite. Fire away.
Well, least favorite, I'm probably going to go with, I'm probably going to go with Frame of Mind. Yeah. Not because it's a bad episode, but because I guess I'm going to make the joke here. I have to be in the right frame of mind to watch it.
Oh boy. Hello.
So, but it's just one of those episodes that I can't just pick up and watch at any time.
Yeah.
And so while it is well done, it's a little convoluted and deals with mental illness in a strange way. Not in a bad way, but just in a strange way.
Right, particularly because he's not mentally ill, but they're trying to
make him, he's not. They're all accusing him of being so, but he's not. Right. So just for that reason, I would just say, like, out of everything, if I had to pick one, I would probably pick that one as the one I would probably go to watch last.
Yeah, I hear you.
In terms of favorite episode, there's a bunch that are really good in here.
Right.
because it's a two-parter, I'll leave it out of the running. So I'm going to pick Timescape.
Yes, fun story. And the Warp Core smiley face is
and the Warp Core smiley face is just hysterical.
Exactly.
So.
Well, this won't be surprising because I pretty much said it. I dislike Suspicions because of how Guinan gets wasted, and how at the end of it, it's like, I gotcha. And I guess if there were more Beverly episodes and you felt a little bit more comfortable with the fact that she's got some good ones and some bad ones, but everything just kind of feels like, with how she's portrayed. So even though I did like some stuff like the Ferengi scientist and the Klingon scientist, and that it wasn't god awful, but I was a little more perturbed about how Whoopi got wasted, particularly since this is her last regular series appearance. And then quite obviously, Second Chances is my favorite. Riker, deep lore, showing how deep that friendship runs between the two of them, I think is super significant. So, all right, we have our first commentary from someone in our community. I'm pretty excited about this. Over on the United Trekkers of Michigan Discord, which is an ancillary Discord to Secret Friends Unite because it's run by April and myself, we have Schloss Ritter, who is actually one of our most ardent fans who comments on things quite frequently. He followed this comment up later with, oh yeah, that's right. He says, does the common progenitor humanoid thing ever come up again in any series? Feels barely canon, only coming up once in a seemingly random episode plot. I commented back that obviously, well, the plot, we're talking about the chase. The plot line of the chase was the overall plot of season 5 of Discovery, which Schloss then said, oh yeah, I forget about Discovery, which, to each their own. I understand. Sometimes I do as well. I will tell you, in my rewatch of Star Trek, having it on a little TV in my office when I'm working, Discovery probably won't factor into that. I'll probably stick. I like to stick with the classics. What can I say? I'm a Next Generation guy.
Nothing wrong with
But
it.
yeah. That's our show. Again, I was very excited that we finally got, the first one was a cheat because I put in something April said. I want to open this up not only to our Discord, our Facebook groups, over on Threads, over on, Instagram or any of our other social media, or in our mailbag, secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Pen us a note. We want to know what you're thinking about when it comes to Star Trek. If it's not related to what we're talking about in a particular episode, I try to put a plug several days before we record to give people a chance to say something. But at any time,
you want to follow up on something that we said on a recent episode.
Yeah,
like, hey,
please.
You guys are completely wrong about frame of mind. Like, I really love this episode for whatever reason. Go for it. Absolutely.
Please do that. And then we will, very good chance we'll read it on the show because we're super psyched about that. And again, I mentioned our Discord. All of the action in Secret Friends Unite is happening on the Discord. We keep the Facebook page going, but we don't do a ton with it. But we like Discord because it's really focused around having conversations, and we definitely want to do that. Let's keep that going. But with that, that's the end of our show. Peter, where do people find you out there?
Well, you can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas. I'm not terribly active, but if you poke at me, I might say something. You can find me on Discord. That's where I'm most active, if at all.
Right.
You can also find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channels. And you can also find me behind the scenes at Starship Excelsior.
Oh, yes. And as I had mentioned, we're very active. I'm very active on find me on Threads, Instagram, or Blue Sky, which is the new thing. I am at the C3THECEETHREE. Obviously, we have a separate Secret Friends. You can find us on any of those as well, and we would love to hear from you. And with that, thank you again for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
Nanu, nanu.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.